how you've connected leggings to women's empowerment and self-esteem, because obviously on the surface, it's a pair of leggings.
We judge ourselves to standards that are nigh on impossible, trying to create a positive body image for women, trying to push the anti-Photoshop. When you're passionate about something and you've got your heart in the right place and you want to do something and please people and get it right,
Solve a problem.
you can't go too far wrong. The warehouses are on the same site as our family home, and unfortunately, overnight, the family home burnt to the ground. It was a huge shock to lose everything so quickly and then have to go into work the next day and explain to the staff that there wasn't any light or heat or water and that the house is burnt down. But by the way, we need to get those orders out today. Not one went out late, not one. Perfect is the enemy of good. We were taking our biggest online sales in history, an absolute catastrophe. And I'm trying really hard not to cry. I felt very alone.
From law school student and Goldman Sachs alumni to now director of TLC Sport, Charlotte Ayoub heads up the inclusive sportswear brand that's been featured in the likes of Marie Claire, The Times, and many, many more. Charlotte, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so first off, where would we be without leggings?
I know, right? Naked.
Naked. I love that. I am indeed wearing TLC Sport leggings, and anyone who's watching the episode on video on YouTube, they are amazing. And you really do have to put them on and wear them. It's just a whole other level. So honestly, commend you and your mum for this incredible brand that you've created. I'm sat here very, very comfortable while I'm interviewing you today.
Good. No, honestly, that's what it's all about. I think we've spent years developing the fabrics and the fits for that exact kind of feedback, just to make a difference to women, make their lives easier. They can put something on and know that they're supported and they can just trust it.
And you know what? I know this episode isn't going to come out for a little while anyway, but we are sort of hot off the heels of International Women's Day. And I did a whole kind of shout out on supporting, female-founded brands. And just the difference when you buy a product or service or you experience something that's made by women for women, it's like, oh...
You can feel it, right?
You feel it.
Yeah.
You genuinely feel it. So
Yeah.
that's the TLC Sport plug out the way. But it is very much a genuine customer review. So I mentioned your mum. So TLC Sport has its origins in 1984. So let's rewind the clock to the leotard-clad early 80s of your mum starting off the business.
Yeah. I mean, I really do love the story because it's the one thing that nobody can piggyback and nobody can buy. It's our heritage, it's our story, and it's totally unique. So 1984, Cairo. I wouldn't say it was the most fitness-forward country in the world at the time. My mum had just got married and moved out there with my father, and I think she was always into her health and her fitness and keeping fit, especially during her pregnancies, and it wasn't really spoken about out there. So she was quite a character and she just wouldn't really stand for it. She kind of stood up for women, built a studio, started teaching fitness classes and encouraged women to come and said, look, it's good for you, it makes you feel good, it's good for your mental health, it's good for how you look and your self-esteem. Let's do this, So she was very much a girl's girl and knew what women needed, and she wanted to share that in a community that didn't really understand the benefits of it. And then when she realised that they were holding back from coming because of their clothing, that's when she thought, right, that's another problem I've got to fix. So she started developing sportswear, which at the time was leotards. I mean, that's what they were wearing.
The world of Jane Fonda.
Yeah, that's it. With the the sweatbands and the headbands, that's what they were wearing. I mean, we all laugh about it now, but that was what they wore to work out.
It'll come back around again. I'm
sure.
sure.
Do you know what? We've been saying that for the last 20 years. We've still got all the old school leotards upstairs just waiting to make a reappearance. Yeah. I think people just aren't quite there yet, are they? They're just not quite there yet.
And there's a very, very important entrepreneurship lesson in there as well with market readiness. And actually, an example I always talk about is, do you remember about 15 years ago now, Google Glass, the glasses, spectacles that Google created, where they had the intelligent, tech integrated.
It rings a bell.
Rings a bit of a bell. It was all quite a while ago now. People outright rejected it. People were like, ready. Get out. They weren't ready for it. They weren't ready for it. And now, a decade and a half later, we're bringing more of kind of the VR headsets, this, that, and the other. So, the market's got to be ready for it. So when the market's ready for the neon leotards and tights and sweatbands,
we're ready when they are.
Me and you, Charlotte.
On the sidelines.
Lead the charge. So I love so much. You talk about the heritage, the story with your mum back in the 80s. I love that you really leverage that as a point of defensibility or USP with your brand. It's something that no one can take away from you. And I want to dive into how you've connected sportswear, leggings. I know black leggings are your hero product. How you've connected that to women's empowerment and self-esteem, because obviously on the surface, it's a pair of leggings.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit more about how you've got that deeper sort of mission, the belief, the purpose of the business, and a bit more on that kind of women's empowerment side.
That's a really good question, because essentially, what differentiates one pair of black leggings from another, and why are so different that they actually make a difference to women's lives. And I think the key is that women form an emotional connection to our leggings because of the way that they make them feel. We've engineered and designed them over years to ensure that when they put them on, they get a feeling of feeling good. I can't put my finger on it. It's a je ne sais quoi feeling.
I can.
Right, yeah, I know, but what's the word? It's just, you put them on and you feel a bit more like yourself. You feel a bit more confident.
Yeah.
They fit, they knit, they tuck in all the right places. I mean, there's nothing more.
You can get on with your life.
Well, that's the thing. And when you online shop, you never quite know what to expect. And when something doesn't fit or something's not quite right, it can be quite demoralising.
Yeah.
You can look in the mirror and you can, well, I've got to send it back now, and I really liked that, and what's wrong with me, and my tummy's too big, or my legs are too short, and you can go onto a spiral of self-criticism, and rightly or wrongly, we're quite tough on ourselves as women. We judge ourselves to standards that are nigh on impossible. That's a whole nother story. So I think that creating a product that I think the key is that we've actually differentiated and understood that we're all different. So we've created different sizes, different shapes, different leg lengths, leggings which tackle different problem points. We design for body shapes in order to encourage women to order things that will fit their bodies and their needs, so that when they do put them on and they look in the mirror, they don't only feel the difference when they're on, they can actually see the benefits of something really, really well fitting.
Made for them, as opposed to trying to make our bodies
fit into something else. Exactly. And it feels like it looks like it's made for them, and that's how they're meant to feel. And I think that's why we're different, and that's why they're so loyal. And I think they respect and appreciate the fact that the time and the effort that we've put into that to generate that confidence and that boost, to make them, go get moving that day, or go to the gym that day, or smash that interview that day. Just that one thing that they were going to do. Yeah. They remember us.
1,000%. I'm having to hold myself back and bite my tongue as I'm listening to you, because I'm just getting so excited. I'm completely resonating with everything you're saying. And I think we're perhaps both kind of girls of the 90s as well. And you've just made me think back to those awful moments of being in these harshly lit changing rooms, especially kind of teenage years. You're going through an awkward phase anyway. And I actually had really bad body dysmorphia, which is so wild when you come out the other end.
Yeah.
And to your point of, that spiral of self-criticism, self-hate, you already have those hang-ups, and then you try on something and it looks completely different to what it looked like on the hanger or on the website, as you say, with online shopping. So I totally get it, and I'm sure many of our listeners will as well. So thank you for making us
normalising
love ourselves a little bit more, all shapes and sizes. So I want to talk about the marketing with your brand as well, because having a product that is, I know you're anti-trends, aren't you? Your hero product is
correct.
Black leggings.
Yeah.
So is that a challenge for you with your marketing in fashion, in such a trend-led business? How do you stay current, always be part of the conversation, new campaigns, new ideas, keep that marketing machine going when you've got this wardrobe staple that you're selling all year round, right?
That is a really good question. And given that I'm responsible for marketing, it is, the bane of my life. I'm not going to lie. It is tricky, constantly trying to create something fresh and new from a product that, has been a bestseller for 20 years. It's always there. It's always in stock. It can be a struggle. But what I would say is that we talk outside of the product, and I think that's really important. It's not just about black leggings. It's not all that we're about. There's so much to educate the customer on: the story, Mum and I, women, business, behind the scenes, the fact that we run our own factory. There's so much to talk to them about that we just pull on that emotional connection with them, and we just discuss that. Things outside of what we're trying, outside of the manufacturing and the leggings, trying to create a positive body image for women, trying to push the anti-Photoshop, trying to highlight the dangers of, body editing on social media. So we talk a lot about that and try to educate customers to really think twice when they scroll and look online and when they buy, so that they're not being negatively impacted through this imagery that probably isn't real.
Yeah, I love that so much. And, I'm already bought into your story and your brand, but I think there's a really key lesson there to share with our listeners too, which is there's so much more to your organization than the product itself. You've got your story, your origin, your background. There's so much that you can, build a whole personality and narrative around. So if anyone else is struggling with your marketing, then take some inspiration from Charlotte here.
Yeah, there's always something wider.
So we mentioned your mum as well. So she started the business, and correct me if I'm wrong, so she CEO and you're more of a COO type
That's
role.
correct. I would say she's more creative director, and I'm more managing director. I hope that I'm not going to get told off for saying that, but I'm sure she would agree with that. She's very much the brains behind the product, the creativity behind what we do. She comes up with the idea, even marketing. She comes up with ideas, fabrics. She's particularly driven towards textiles and making things fit and doing something different, constantly ahead of her time. She's like a horse I'm trying to rein in all the time.
I want to come back to this whole managing director, creative director. I think maybe more in the tech world, it's more of the C-suite. So it's the equivalence there would be maybe the CEO, COO. So I want to talk about that. But before I forget, just because you're mentioning about kind of the textiles and her visionary approach to product innovation, I know you've got a fantastic story to share on that note of taking, was it 12 years?
20.
Okay, so share that story before I forget.
It is incredible. It's one of my favourite stories within the business because it's real. This is genuinely real. I had just joined. It was about 12 years ago. Obviously, TLC had been running, 25 years prior to that. And we were on the hunt for a new fabric. Mum has been on the hunt for developing and delivering bespoke fabrics, ever since the company started. She never really bought off the shelf. And if she did, it was a fabric of a certain quality that was, it had connotations with TLC. That was the whole point of the brand. But typically, she made her own. I had just joined and I'd flown out to the factory in Cairo, and I was learning the ropes, understanding, what was going on. I'd come from a legal background, as you say. So this wasn't something that came naturally to me. And there was a knock at the door, and we both didn't know who the guy was. He came and he sat down with just a raw cream material, and he put it on the desk, and he said, "You don't know who I am, but I know you very well, and this is the fabric that you're looking for." And so we kind of looked at each other a bit confused. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? What is that? And she just stretched it, and she stretched it, and she shook it, and she listened to it. And she went, "My God, he's done it." And that was it. And that forms the basis of our best-selling fabric. Oh, so I haven't told you, how he knew. So 20 years ago, my mother was, 20 years prior to that, she was obviously slightly younger, energetic, running around Cairo trying to get the fabric that she wanted. It didn't fade, it didn't pill, it didn't bag. She wanted the fabric that did it all, so that when you put them on, not only could you fall in love with them, that they would last, and they would last years and years, and that you get your value and you get your money's worth. She was a great believer in longevity and durability of her products. So she would go, trial different fabrics, and walk back in the next week with a swatch in her hand, screaming why it's wrong, and this was wrong, and it bled, and this is pilling here. And the man that came in with that fabric was somebody that worked for one of the biggest fabric suppliers in Cairo. And he was young at the time, and he remembered her. And he said, "One day I'm going to have my own mill, and I'm going to make that woman the fabric that she wants, because I know what it is and I know how to do it." Obviously, at the time, nobody really cared, or they wouldn't really listen to him. Anyway, he did. He set up his own business, and the first place he came was us, and we were his first customer.
Wow, an incredible, inspiring story. I love
a lovely
that.
story.
Inspiring with him, the fact that he's like, "I'm going to rise to the challenge. I'm going to
and it's
go
great
out
for him, right? Because
Yeah.
he's had the repeat business, and we've scaled the business with that fabric, and we're very loyal to him, and we develop and move forward together. It's such a partnership.
Yeah, amazing. It's like you've got that, entrepreneurship, it's such a glamorized term as well, but there is entrepreneurship across all, areas of the supply chain. You've got you and your mum as more of the faces of this consumer-facing business, but, this guy, is an incredible entrepreneur.
Yes,
I want
absolutely.
him on my show next as well.
Absolutely. I think when you're passionate about something and you've got your heart in the right place and you want to do something and please people and get it right.
Solve a problem.
You can't go too far wrong. Whereas when you set something up because you want a part-time job, or you set it up because you want an easy income, or if you set it up for reasons, if you set it up for reasons outside of the product and outside of the purpose of what you're trying to do, I don't think you're going to get very far.
Yeah, absolutely. Wise words to share on the show. Absolutely. So I mentioned about, glamorizing roles, and again, with the lovely duo with you and your mum and the strengths that you both bring to the table there. I do think, again, the role of CEO, creative director, the entrepreneur, it is overly glamorized. And I do really resonate with more of that managing director, that COO type role. So I'd love for you to just speak a little bit more. I want to spotlight you and your profile in that sense to kind of rebalance the playing field, if you get what I mean. So your role as CEO, can you talk, managing director, can you talk us through a little bit more of, what that actually entails?
What that means?
Yeah.
I think you're right. It is the entrepreneurship and running a business and business director is over glamorized. And if you knew half of what we had to put up with, a job in Tesco is probably more glamorous than what I have to do on a daily basis. But it is fulfilling in a different way. But I have a very different role to mum in the sense that, I've got to deal with the day-to-day problems here. It can be quite boring sometimes, managing people, managing stock, operations, obviously the website, which is our largest platform in terms of income. And, I wouldn't say there's anything about that that's glamorous or that's, particularly fun. But there are other aspects. And mum is more the creator, the person that comes up with the ideas, and I'm the person that has to action those ideas, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And it's very hard from my perspective because I don't want to stifle her or hold her back too much because, she'll come up with an idea. She'll have no real understanding as to how much work that entails in order to execute. Whereas, my natural instinct would be like, no, we're not doing that. God, no. Whereas actually, she could be right. And it could just be, I don't want to obviously remove ideas from the table because I simply can't put them in my workflow or I don't have the time for it. And that's really hard to manage because naturally you want to say no to things that you don't have time for, but sometimes they're things that you just have to actually add to the list and find a way.
I love that so much. And that is the point that I really wanted to highlight with a bit of that, waffly question there, because we do need those visionaries and we do need those, those big ideas people, but then just equally as important, we need the people who are actually going to make it happen. I've just over, the past few years, I've met a lot of both profiles and I've met people who, give them a vision to work towards and they'll make it happen, but they need the vision. And then obviously more in the entrepreneurial space, it's people are just they're nonstop with the ideas, but they are meaningless if you're not getting them out there. So that's where I think with your role in the business, it's just, I just wanted to highlight a little bit of that yin and yang that's necessary.
Yeah, and she brings that up quite often. It is a very, very good fit in that sense. And I think that if I wasn't a doer and she wasn't a creative, there's no way that the business partnership would have worked and it probably wouldn't have survived. It just so happens that our skill set are totally opposite, yet we know each other well enough in order to work together cohesively. And when you put those things together, you've got
recipe
a
for
great
success.
match.
Yeah. And how do you overcome conflicts then as people who can not only kind of have, be at loggerheads, but obviously the mother and daughter duo? I'm sure you get asked this all the time. But
I get asked this all the time, and I feel like they're always a little bit let down by my answer because there isn't really much conflict. Because we both work in the interests of the business, we very rarely disagree because it's not personal. Yeah. And if there is a disagreement, again, we don't take it personally. We look at what's best for the business and I'll go, actually, you are right. Or actually, no, I'm probably right. And it's very easy to humble yourself when you know that something else is coming first. So that's just what we do.
Yeah, nice. No, I love that. Quick one. I need to tell you a bit about Patreon. If you haven't heard of it before, Patreon is the creator platform that enables people like you to support podcasters like me. I actually studied art history for all of 5 minutes, which is where the whole idea of patronage, aka financially supporting artists, comes from. Kings and queens would commission artists to create paintings to adorn their castle walls. Upper class lords and ladies celebrated their accomplishments by using their wealth to support the arts. And during the Italian Renaissance, my favourite era, the Medicis actually developed a close bond with Michelangelo, who painted the Sistine Chapel, and the Sforza family supported Da Vinci, who helped name Leonardo DiCaprio. That is a true story, by the way. Anyway, I know that you're not here for a history lesson thrown in to your business studies class, But if you're feeling like a rich Renaissance royal who wants to support your very own little Botticelli here, then Patreon is the solution for you. Simply tap the link in the show notes to select your tier of patronage to support the show. It starts from a low amount and it really means a lot to help me to continue producing these interviews that I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get back into the episode. So I mentioned a few, press, media titles where you got coverage in your intro. I'm sure I left off a load of them, Marie Claire, The Times, et cetera, et cetera. But I know you've also got some household name retailer partnerships. Yes. So I believe you in kind of Debenhams, very.co.uk.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening who is in that physical product space, wanting to capitalize on those retail channels, can you break down, the practical steps? How did you go from, I guess, black leggings, 1984 in Cairo to 2024, sat here today with your product available in these, household brand names?
Oh, well, first of all, focus on your product and get that right. There's a lot of talk out there saying the product doesn't matter, it's the marketing. That is a very valid point, but your product has got to be right.
I don't think it's that valid, to be honest. I think you want the best marketing in the world.
Well, there you go. And when you say, how did you do it? I sent them the product. Yeah. And that was it.
Yeah.
It was as easy as that.
Wow.
Once I got the right product in the hands of the right person, then it was just discussions on price.
Yeah. You make it sound so simple, Charlotte. You make it sound so straightforward. Did you have an in, or was it part of a strategy?
No, it was no. And there were a lot of no's. So I don't want people to think, gosh, well, how did she do that? And I can't even get... There were a huge amount of no's in the early days. Wouldn't listen, doors were shut. There were times where I didn't know what I was doing. I think at 22, I don't know how, but I managed to get into the head office of John Lewis. And we were sat there in a meeting with a sportswear buyer. And she'd asked us, because obviously it's shapewear as well, and they're black. And I was pulling out all the features of the leggings that weren't just for sport. She asked us where they should sit. She said, well, I really like the product, but I don't know if it should sit in sportswear. Where do you think it should sit? And I just looked at Mum and I don't know. Where do you think it should sit? I don't know. That's your job. Where should it sit? I've never been asked that question before. I hadn't even thought about it. Anyway, of course, I got passed around all the different departments and I never got an order because I didn't know what I was doing. And I think that the key is that know your product, but know your retailer, right? And know what you're doing before you go in. Don't throw things out there and hope something sticks. Have a clear strategy, know what you're doing, or you'll miss opportunities.
Yeah, that's so funny.
That was hilarious.
I can picture I'm almost in that meeting room with you in the head office there. And of course, if you've never been asked the question before, we've all been, whether it's, trying to raise venture capital or trying to get into a big retailer, we're always going to experience something for the first time. And, and honestly, it's a bit of, I obviously plugged TLC and your leggings to plug the show a little bit as well. The one of the purposes of this is that there are so many fantastic entrepreneurs who have gone through the ringer, who have gone through the ups and downs, who have been asked these questions for the very first time, that sharing these stories with the listeners is, they ask that if I'm going to have a meeting with John Lewis.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, now I know.
Now
it was a bit late. I mean, at the time, I would have looked back and I would have slapped myself. Just say sportswear. It's why you're there. Your name is TLC Sport, Charlotte. I mean, it was all there for me. But they asked me a question. It confused me. And I think the minute you show any uncertainty towards your product or your brand, you've put the uncertainty into their mind. And I think that's why you can't have any. You need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Who you are, what you're doing. Just be really clear on that.
Yeah, not only to instill that trust and confidence with them, but also you're marketing to everyone.
Correct. And if you're not sure, how can they be sure?
Exactly. We use the term marketing, I think, especially in a direct to consumer, e-commerce business in more of that consumer-facing way. But actually, you're marketing to the partners, potential investors, to everyone. So that was a learning that you kind of, been asked it now, you'll never forget that one.
Or not. I'm still hurt.
I can tell all these years later. Yeah. And it has been quite a few years. So you've been in the business for, was it 12 years?
12, 13, I've lost count.
Something like that, quite a while. So I can imagine there's been a lot of ups and downs during that time. I know you've shared with me a few kind of horror stories. Would you like to kind of recount one particular anecdote?
There was An anecdote, from something that I've learned.
Something I know you've had a low period
Yes.
of yours where a natural disaster, which was completely out of your hands, happened to the business.
Yes. It was a couple of years ago now, and the warehouse is on the same site as our family home, and unfortunately, overnight the family home burnt to the ground. Through no real fault of our own, a subcontractor was working on the property at the time, and it was a huge shock to lose everything so quickly, and then have to go into work the next day and explain to the staff that there wasn't any light or heat or water and that the house is burnt down. But by the way, we need to get those orders out today because otherwise they will penalise us. And so, it was a really, really difficult time for us personally, and for my mother to go through a trauma like that and then have to carry on. It really does teach you a lot. It teaches you a lot about yourself, and it teaches you a lot about your team. And I know it sounds cliche in a way, but it's in those darker moments that you really grow and you really find yourself and you find the strength of the team. It really shows you and highlights what's good about your team and what you can do, what you can really achieve yourself if you believe it. Whereas, I always thought, well, we'll get through anything, but to actually be tested.
Exactly. When it's
and
put
to be
the
put through it. Yeah. And to then get through it. Yeah. It gives me a strength that, well, I've done that. I know I can do that.
Been through it.
So, and so you just move forward. But there will be things that happen in your personal life or even in your business life that might just seem too much to bear. And what I would say is just take it one day at a time. And you can do it. Things happen for a reason. You won't understand at the time as to how something so catastrophic could happen and something good can come out of it. You just won't be able to comprehend that, but it will. And you just have to have the faith.
That's such a healthy, balanced view that I'm sure if anyone is going through a tough time at the moment, it's hard to hear, isn't it?
It's so hard to hear and so hard to take on board.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've definitely been in lots of horrible, dark moments myself. And I think this is another thing that I do love to bring to light on this show as well is our minds do play tricks on us, and our emotions, they can be treated as, gospel. They can be, it feels like that's your reality. You're getting all these, signals, your body's telling you this. It feels horrific. It feels like the end of the world. So again, to hear what you just said there of, it will all be okay. You will get through it. In the moment, it's so hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
So going back to those dark days for a moment, as guilty as I feel, kind of making my guests relive those horrible moments. But what do you remember that really helped you kind of pull through? You mentioned the team.
Yeah.
What helped you in that moment to be like, well, we're going to pull through?
Oh, it was our team.
Right.
It was our team. I think you've got to imagine they've come into work and it was shocking for them. I mean, one of our key members of staff, Anne, she's been with us over 20 years. She's known our home, that family house, me, since I was 12 years old. She's known us. It was hard for them to come in and work in that environment, to know how hurt we were by it and to try to carry on regardless. Not only that, it was winter and the fire had completely destroyed all the electricity, the internet, the water. The heat.
May I ask how it happened? You said you had a subcontractor.
Yeah,
what
it was
the reason?
Well, the hot works on a building, and if you're not careful, it can catch an ember, and you won't really know about it. And
were you and your family in the house?
My mother was. Yeah, my mother was. It was, and I do say, you're very lucky. A few hours, you would have been in bed, and God knows what could have happened. So you do have to look at this as a blessing because she walked out unscathed.
Wow.
You lost everything, but you have yourself and your health, and you built that. The first time, if you see what I'm saying. You need to really respect the power of everything that you had, you achieved, and you can achieve it again. It's not out of reach. It was yours. And
I love that. I think there's like a short poem or something. I'm going to cock it up like I always do, but there's this short poem around kind of like a bird on a branch, and when the branch snaps, you've got the wings to
fly.
So I think that's a really healthy reminder as well. You did it once, you are capable, you can do it again.
Yeah. And the team, I think having the team around us working under those circumstances and still remaining so positive, not coming to us with more problems, fixing things outside, not trying to hassle us, it really made us feel, okay, all right, we're going to be okay.
We've got the right people around us.
It was that support system that we had in place, and that's been nurtured by my mother and the ethos of the brand for over 20 years. That's something that we've built. It's a family environment, and because we created that, when a crisis comes, it's like having your family there.
Yeah.
And that for us was hugely
lovely.
important.
That's
hugely
so
important.
nice. So the house is burnt to the ground. I don't mean to laugh as I say that.
I mean, it has been,
Well, it's just making me laugh at the punchline of this, because your house is burnt to the ground during winter, so you've got no heating, everyone's come back in. Customers, none the wiser.
Couldn't care.
They got their black leggings
Couldn't
the
care.
next day, cool.
They couldn't care, and this is what was
And nor
really
should
tough.
they, of course.
You know,
Yeah.
what we did during that period, I think we did 4,000 or 5,000 orders during that 2-month period.
Wow.
We just launched on Very. It was Black Friday. I'd really started to see the growth of the business. I'd really started to realise its potential and the power that we had on our direct to consumer. And that's a hell of a lot of orders to dispatch under those circumstances, and not one went out late. Not one.
Wow. Not a single order.
Not one. And that for me that's probably our biggest achievement as a team. That we just pulled through. And really the reason why is because they placed that order and they want their leggings. Just give them the leggings. Like, that's what we do. It's what we're all about. They don't care that this is, do you know what I mean? And it's not really something that we wanted to communicate with them. So we had one choice. Just carry on as normal. It's very British.
It's such but it is such a great Phoenix from the Ashes story. You've had this horrific tragedy. Of course, I use that term tongue in cheek. The name of the show, it rhymes with strategy and stuff. But this is a tragedy. This is a really tragic event. But then I just want to highlight what you just said. This was what came out of it was the biggest achievement.
Yeah,
there's huge sales volumes, not a single order delivered late. So kudos to you and your team for that. How amazing is that? You mentioned Black Friday.
Yeah.
I know
you know me well enough to know all these little. They're getting all the nuggets
stories,
here.
Exactly. What happened on Black Friday, Charlotte?
So Black Friday, we had our last Black Friday last year. And I've been preparing this really for months, trying to get this right, engineering our exact communications at the exact time and our flash sales, and it was working incredibly well. I mean, the preparation really paid off for us, and I was really excited about it. And I do have a trait of being a perfectionist. I'm aware of that. But it's never flawed me, and I think this Black Friday I really learned that perfect is the enemy of good. So I was on the website on Black Friday, and we were taking our biggest online sales in history in a single day, right? So it was a fantastic day. I was really excited. I was like, what are we going to end on? What are we going to hit? And I'd extended the online chats so that I could take over customer chats whilst the office was closed, just for that few hours, between like 6 and 9 p.m, just to ensure that customers had answers to questions.
And sorry to butt in at just this point, but that just connects back to the whole piece around the over-glamorized, and
there you go. I'm sat on a Friday night answering customer questions on my mobile, and that's that's life.
Exactly.
That's how it is, and I love doing it because it keeps me close to the business, and I can understand what customers are saying, what's confusing, and I can then change things on the website to address it. That's precisely what I did. So a customer was complaining that something wasn't quite working properly, so I thought, that's no problem, I'll just go and fix it. With no experience in coding or HTML or anything, armed with a law degree, I went into the back-end code of our website on Black Friday and edited a major piece of code, which resulted in an absolute catastrophe. It resulted in orders being checked out with the wrong size. So customers, for example, would put a small in the basket and it would check out with an extra large. I mean, it completely scrambled the code to the point where not only were products being sold that we didn't have in stock, products were being sold that then filtered through to the wrong size. I mean, it was a mess to the point where I had no idea how I was going to clean this up. So there we go. It's 7:00. Our developers are in bed in India, and I'm trying really hard not to cry. I think at this point I was breathing fire. How am I going to fix this? I've just cocked up, the biggest day of the year. What am I going to do? So I have naturally friends who are also business owners, and I do a plea for help in a WhatsApp group. Somebody's got to help me, right? Does anybody know a website developer who can help me right now? I get a LinkedIn profile from one of them, and I don't know what good a LinkedIn profile is going to do for me at 7:00 at night on a Friday, but I have a little click and a look through, and I realise that the person that's been recommended to me is someone that I know, someone that you know. Nathan Lomax of Quickfire Digital.
Shout out, Nathan.
He was brilliant. So there I am. So I think, great, I know this person. I've got his number. In fact, I think I sent his girlfriend leggings like a week ago or something. So I can definitely call this guy. So I call him up. He was going home with his Chinese, I think, at that point, kicking back after a long day. And I'm on the phone in tears, in absolute tears. And he must have been shocked. Anyway, within half an hour, he had fixed the site and we were back up and running. And within that 1 hour period where, I'd cocked it up, all the orders that came through were contacted and rectified. And it was something that we managed to catch and nip in the bud. And we did go on, obviously, to do... it was a brilliant day. It was a great day. But it really did teach me a lesson. And it was, if something's working and it's working well enough, don't touch it unless someone's there that can fix it. Because I felt very alone in that half an hour. Very, very alone.
I bet you did. And I can imagine, you going out to WhatsApp for this plea for help.
Desperate.
And not even, just only because I've been there, so, I hope I'm not stepping out of line, but you're not thinking straight.
No, not at all.
So seeing that profile and you've
I
actually
know
met him.
Yes,
I've got his
why
number.
didn't I think of it? I was in a fluster.
You just flustered.
Exactly.
I think this episode has contained some of the best plugs and shout outs for, I think we've sold TLC Sport very well. I think we've plugged my show.
Yeah.
And then shout out to Nathan Lomax of, is it Quickfire Digital?
Yeah.
So, well done him. So shout out to him if you've got any Friday night broken
He calls it the
Shopify.
Batmobile. Yeah, and you give him a call and he'll be there. They were brilliant.
That is hilarious. And I think even with that as well, we've also touched on all the other incredible entrepreneurs or people with that entrepreneurial spirit that's part of this whole network, whether it was your fabric supplier. Nathan as well here, he's owner of his own business.
Correct,
and so there is that commitment, that, that desire to help you despite being Friday night. He's got his Chinese takeaway ready to tuck into. So well done, Nathan. You came to the rescue. So that's hilarious. Oh dear, you've been through some ups and downs. What's the future of TLC Sport for you? It's been a good couple of decades. What do the next decades hold in store for you?
That is a really, really good question. I think the potential is just endless when it comes to TLC. So who knows? But we're definitely planning to grow, and maybe one day there'll be an IPO out there.
Watch this space. Yeah. I love it. I speak it into existence.
Exactly, manifesting.
Yeah.
And working. Don't forget to work. You can't just manifest.
Put the hard work in.
You've got to put them in.
You need the two, unfortunately. Closing question, as a tradition on this show, I think, we've covered the highs and the lows, so maybe you've already touched on this, but one of the reasons it's called Strategy and Tragedy is because often the best lessons can come from the biggest mistakes or tragedies. Is there anything else that we haven't already covered that you'd like to share that's taught you an unforgettable lesson?
I think there are no key things that I can remember off the top of the head that have taught me lessons outside of what we've discussed. But I think what I would like to end on and say to listeners is that when things get tough and when you feel like you're on the floor and it's your last breath and you are done, you're really done, you've been fighting for God knows how long and you feel it's over, you got to pick yourself up at that point, because that's actually when it begins. And I know that a lot of people won't understand that or won't want to hear that, but that's when it begins, because that's where you've grown and you've learned. And you often find that's what separates people, the people that have made it, against the people that haven't, is that resilience in that moment.
You gave me goosebumps there, Charlotte, genuinely. That's really powerful. What a great note to end this show on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Loved hearing your story. I feel like I'm sort of hanging out with a friend here as well. So you made my job very easy with this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done to everything that you're doing. Honestly, I'm all for it. I buy into your mission. I buy into the actual product itself. I love the origin story of your mum.
Yeah.
Shout out to mum and everyone else involved in your story. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Steph. It's been great to be here.
And thank you so much for listening. We really hope that you've enjoyed this story. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Tune in. Episodes are weekly. So hopefully see you next time.